Jamboria is a research and project developer. We're also expecting Ms. Claudia Anthony from Sierra Leone, a journalist of international repute. We also have Dr. Zubairu Y from Canada, who is an assistant professor of political science at the Lakehead University, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada, and is also author of the recently published book, Epistemologies of African Conflicts, Violence, Evolutionism, and the War in Sierra Leone. Last but not the least is Dr. Mohamed Julde Diallo from Senegal, who is the Sahel advisor to the special representative of the United Nations Secretary General for West Africa. Again, our topic is Sierra Leone's decade-long civil war, unpacking the lessons. As we know, on the 23rd of March 1991, the Revolutionary United Front attacked Sierra Leone from neighboring Liberia, and there commenced a war which was to last for 10 years, 9 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. The atrocities of the war were very much felt within the society. Various atrocities included forced displacement, abduction, arbitrary detention, killing, destruction of property, assault, physical torture, extortion, rape, sexual abuse, amputations, forced recruitment, sexual slavery, forced cannibalism, and forced incest. The list is unlimited. So, assisting me to unpack, as I said, we have a group of panelists who I've mentioned. And I would ask the first question probably to Mr. Boy Jallo Jamboria. Mr. Boy Jallo Jamboria, I had a look at our TRC report, Truth and Reconciliation report, and part of it reads that the central cause of the war was endemic greed, corruption, and nepotism that deprived the nation of its dignity and reduced most people to a state of poverty. So my question to you is, what role did poverty and employment play in as a contributing factor to the war? What were the socio-economic factors?
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the World Wide Web who will be listening to this program. Poverty actually was the consolidation of a process or processes that started, which created a lot of friction in the society, thereby allowing a situation wherein there was no central control for the state to run within an organized and well-planned, focused and what we would say development-oriented approach. As a result of these frictions in the society, which started well before independence, what should have been done to create a national and a dynamic economy was not done. Instead, the elite that emerged before and who took over power from the colonialists concentrated more or less on protecting their own interests by way of staying in power. As a result, a lot of things went wrong, and this culminated finally in a situation wherein our economy went bad and then poverty set in. As a result of this poverty, a lot of youths and those who were in the employable age became very disgruntled. This was what led to the formation of the RUF. Yes, Mr. Chairman. I hope you get my trend.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you have something else to add? Carry on.
No, I would rather somebody else comes in.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Boy Jallo Jambore. Yes, as Mr. Boy Jallo Jambore has noted, there was looting of state coffers. State coffers were plundered by the elite. And one notable feature of your contribution is that it resulted in a group of disgruntled youths. And emanating from the fact that the society was, sort of withering away. Dr. Zubai, why? It appears that the war did not really have a political root of philosophy. We know that most wars have relate to central government, in that probably the central government is absent, or probably there are usually ethnic or regional dimensions. But it appears that the war, it appeared to be more of a criminal enterprise where the youths, as Mr. Jallo Jambore said, the youths were used to wreak vengeance on societies that had abandoned them. What is your take on this, Dr. Y?
Thank you very much for having me, and I'll have to disagree with you on this point. Contrary to popular knowledge perceptions, the war did not start as a criminal enterprise. It was very political, and we should always remember that. And I think Boy actually created the background to which we could segue into conversations about the war. So if you check the history and the background within which the war emerged, it emerged out of concrete political conditions. If you look at the studies of Ibrahim Abdullah, Ismail Rashid, and don't forget Ismail Rashid was very central to the student union politics that eventually will end up creating and providing the revolutionary consciousness that will lead to the formation of the RAF. They have demonstrated in their studies that the war was the product of real and concrete historical struggles and political contestations over the state in the post-independent area. The issue was what the state should be, the purpose it should serve. We know, and Boy has alluded to that Sierra Leone had become a site of woes and miseries as political and economic events in the post-independence era, partly brought about partly by the leadership failures, and of course negative externalities. So you look at falling or failing commodity prices, the oil crisis, the debt crisis, structural adjustment, but also you had a political leadership which was very much self-interested, and they were incapable of transforming and creating a state that would address the wishes and provide the level for the advancement of various sectors of society. What you ended up having then, the pathologies that had originally been introduced by the colonial state ended up, of course, being really accentuated by the leadership failures in the post-independent era. And Abdullah and Rashid have also pointed to the fact that the absolutist mentality that developed during this period ended up radicalizing first university students and, of course, youths. And the RUF traces its origin to that radical revolutionary ideology that had arisen within Sierra Leone society. So I wouldn't say that the war was criminal. In fact, what Fode Sanko and the RUF did was to appropriate what was a collective national revolutionary imaginary. In Sierra Leone, when I was growing up, we used to say, if we not fight in this country, nothing will go better. That was a fact. And so when the war happened, everybody wanted to draw themselves from it and say, it's only a group of criminals, ragtags, these are the ones who are responsible for the violence. And part of that is as a result of the fact that, of course, the war ended up becoming very dastardly and with all of the atrocities that were committed. And I think for us to be able to understand the violence, that is what we should be focusing on. What exactly led to this disconnect between a revolutionary project that said it wanted to free the people from corrupt system, but ended up like brutally violating them, committing all of these atrocities. And I think that is the most important thing that we should be focusing on, instead of just saying they were criminals, they didn't have revolutionary tendency. And let me just end on this point. If you check, for instance, when Police and Co and the RUF were invited to government after Lomé 1999, if really it was just like diamonds, for instance, as some people have suggested, that led to the conflict, why is it that even though Police and Co was in charge of the country's strategic resources, why were they trying to capture power? Why were they constantly? If it was diamond, they would have been satisfied that they now had control over the country's diamonds. Why were they trying insistently to capture state power? And I think we need to ask these very serious questions. And for me, we have to begin by looking at the state, the nature of violence within the state, everyday violence that is embedded within Sierra Leone society, and the way power is exercised within that society will lead and provide a clue to understanding the nature of violence during the war. I'll end there
yes,
now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, is that Mr. Jallo Jambore?
Yes. If I can just come in to subscribe to some of the points that Dr. Y has made. If we look at the historical perspective of our political development, we will see, which I did mention them in the beginning actually, but the question was not directed towards that. So I decided to wait. What we will see was a society or a nation which was formed but which had no central or core. First, before 1924, the protectorate had no direct Western type of political education nor administration. The Creoles in the Western area had everything. They had a long-standing experience in this thing. And by 1924, when the Governor Slater Constitution allowed this Westminster type of politics to be taken to the protectorate, the Creoles were gradually eliminated, whilst power at the beginning was given to the ruling elite. Later on, by 1950s, this thing changed again, and power was taken from these ruling elites. These fissures, these internal grievances, created a society which got independence, and there was no central or ideological focus in terms of building a nation. It was like this class had its own objective and goals, that class had its own objective and goals. It was like when we say elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. The youths who suffered were the ones who finally took up a cause and said, no, we have had too much. This was what led to the war. And like Dr. Y said, the war was not criminal. It was the result of the inability of our political system to develop itself and have a national focus. And if we are to address the issues of the war, which I think we are still not addressing, we have to begin to look at how are we going to close the ranks between these different groups that we have in our country. Otherwise, we will soon see our country galvanize again into another crisis now that we have oil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jallo.
They are still powerful. They are shadow states within the state.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for putting things in perspective. Probably, I hope, probably before the end of the program, we can be able to decipher the political philosophy of the RF. Ms. Claudia Anthony has now joined us. Ms. Anthony, welcome. And looking at the political, social, economic situation in Sierra Leone prior to the war, would you say that the war was an inevitable sequence of the prevailing society? In your view, why did Sierra Leone battle with itself?
I definitely disagree with the school of thought that profiles that diamond was the cause of the war. There were a lot of